Welcoming you guys to One Piece chapter 1095. My name is Sai, and today we're just here to talk about the latest chapter. So yeah, with that being said, let's just hop right into it. So first up, we have the cover page, and it is another reader requested one. That being said though, Buggy chasing a monkey is pretty funny. I mean, he thinks the monkey stole his nose, but you can actually see that Buggy still has his nose underneath his hand. Great stuff. If we wanted to look deep into it, we could say that this is somewhat symbolic of Buggy chasing Luffy, since Luffy is way ahead of Buggy in terms of the race to become Pirate King. With that being said, I am really curious to see how Buggy is going to acquire the 4 road poneglyphs. I mean, the 4th one is still hidden, and to get the 3 other ones, he still needs to go to Wano, to Zou, and to Whole Cake Island. So just keep in mind that while all this crazy stuff is happening here on Egghead Island, Buggy, Crocodile, Mihawk are slowly following in the Straw Hat's footsteps and collecting the poneglyphs. So now, on to the actual chapter, we get a bunch of reaction shots from Marine fodder. They are all absolutely stunned and shocked by Saint Saturn's appearance, and I really don't blame them. So, with all the fodder Marines being filtered out of Egghead Island, the only people left standing on the Marine side are the Vice Admirals, and they're all posed up right behind the Straw Hats, ready to fire. One of the main reasons I'm pointing these guys out is because we actually see the Vice Admiral with the sword haircut actually posing up with what seems to be a tri-beam cannon out of Dragon Ball Z. I have no idea what his ability actually is, but I am kind of curious now. Before any of the VAs can actually do anything though, Saint Saturn tells everybody to quiet down. He says, "Quiet down, you insects," which I do find quite fascinating because a couple chapters ago, when he was reading the news articles and talking about humans in general, he calls them insects there as well. Of course, every celestial dragon views themselves as greater than human. We do have to take into consideration that Saint Saturn is also a spider demon bull ox thing. So in a way, there is an extra layer to Saint Saturn calling people insects. So after Saturn drops that one-liner, he decides to drop something else as well. People are concerned for him because Bonney stabbed him last chapter, and he says, "Yo guys, quiet down. If I didn't want to get stabbed, I would have dodged." And what he does afterwards is so foul. You know, he knocks Bonney off his chest. I think he just looks at her and she flies away. But Sanji's coming in. Sanji's coming in to stop Saint Saturn and to save Bonney. But that's when he stares at Sanji, and Sanji gets knocked back. I know there's a lot of people out there who like to play sides, saying Zoro, Sanji, Luffy, like, you know, that doesn't matter. At the end of the day, Sanji is still a very strong character. And yet, Saint Saturn was able to push him back with ease. And not just that, but if you look at Sanji, the next time we see him, he's actually bleeding down the head. Sanji, on this island, tanked a punch from Seraphim Jinbei and was unscratched. Saint Saturn is just on a completely different level right now. And I didn't even mention what Saturn does to add insult to injury on Bonnie's behalf, but he actually pulls out her sword and he just instantly recovers. That wound straight up heals. It's like nothing happened to the man. If you want to go down the route and say that Saint Saturn has a mythical Zoan devil fruit, this is pretty par for the course because Zoans are known, when they awaken, to have crazy rejuvenation abilities. On the opposite end though, there are a lot of theories out there saying that Saint Saturn is actually immortal. He obtained the immortal youth surgery or something like that. And that is why he took 0 damage from that sword blow. While I do like to keep these chapter breakdowns somewhat chronological, going on to the later segments of the chapter, we actually see that Saint Saturn looks exactly the same today as he did 40 years ago. So the theory that he is actually immortal is looking pretty dang good right now. So after that performance from Saint Saturn, he turns his attention to Kizaru, who is now laying on the ground, hand on his head, because he is not feeling so good. He is feeling that attack from Luffy last chapter, and Saturn says, "Hey Kizaru, even for you, that took a really long time." Kizaru says he's not gonna make any excuses for himself, and that he's gonna be out of commission for a little bit while he recovers. And Saturn, being the understandable boss that he is, says, "It's okay. I understand the reason why," as he looks towards Luffy, which I just gotta say really hyped me up for the Void Century, because if Saint Saturn truly is immortal and he was there 900 years ago, that must mean that he at one point must have fought Sun God Nika. So he probably looks at Kizaru versus Luffy and saying, "Yep, Don't worry, Kizaru, I have been there as well and I know what you're fighting. Thankfully for Saturn though, Luffy has no fight in him because he is out of steam from his bout with Kizaru. Gear 5th has major stamina issues. And I do wonder when he's going to get out of that rut and eventually just be able to go into Gear 5th mode whenever he wants for as long as he wants. Because just thinking back to Gear 3rd, after using it once or twice, Luffy would become a kid for a solid 2 minutes. And then there's Gear 4th, where after he uses it for a while, he just straight up cannot use Haki for 10 minutes. These repercussions are insane. And here's the thing, Gear 4th, Luffy still had that issue even on the rooftop against Kaido. Since Sun God Nika is a mythological Zoan Devil Fruit, I do wonder if there's some special way to get him more energy. Maybe we do need more people to do the little Sun God Nika dance to get Luffy's heartbeat up and at it again. So, going on, Saint Saturn, with no hesitation, tries to kill Luffy, tries to stab him with his spider leg, but that is when Frankie comes in with the strong right. I know it's very little, but I really am glad that Frankie gets some spotlight here. It makes the decision of bringing him down to the Fabrio phase feel good. But you know who isn't feeling good? Luffy, because after he takes that strong right, you can actually see Luffy coughing up some blood as he's flying away. So after witnessing Frankie's strong right, Saint Saturn says, I see. You have quite a powerful crew. But in a different translation, or other translations, Saint Saturn actually says, I see. You're the type of pirate crew that works together. So while both translations are technically correct, I really do prefer the latter. Because now that we have Saint Saturn on God's Valley 38 years ago, we know that there's a good chance that he ran into the Rock's pirates, and they were infamous for not working together. I know this is a really subtle line, but I really enjoy it because it just adds an extra layer to Saturn's word choice. It makes him feel experienced. So Saturn ends up talking some more about how hopeless the Straw Hat situation is, and I completely agree with him. I mean, they have the 9 Vice Admirals surrounding them, Saint Saturn is here holding Bonney, Luffy is out of commission, and Zoro is still being stalled by Rob Lucci on the top floor. Things are just straight up not looking good. Why can't humans do as they're told as he's squeezing life out of Bonney? He just goes off, man. Which also is kind of funny that he's squeezing the life out of Bonney, because just a couple chapters ago, he was like, hey, Bonney, she's here on Egghead? Just let her go, she's just a little girl. And all the meanwhile, the Straw Hats have to sit and watch in horror because Frankie, Sanji, Atlas, and Vegapunk cannot move a muscle. And Vegapunk says, yo, this must be the work of a Devil Fruit. This isn't scientific, something's going on here. And I agree, something really strange is going on here, because if you look at that panel where Sanji and Frankie and the rest of them are on the ground, you can see this weird aura keeping them at bay. Unlike Haki, which has this ironclad shadowing and blackness to it, this aura is almost invisible. It actually took me a minute to actually see what people were talking about here. So while Saturn is straight up murdering Bonney, she says, hey, you killed my father. And Saturn says, oh, he is the lone survivor of the Buccaneer tribe, a tribe that committed atrocities hundreds of years ago. And I was like, wait, lone survivor? Does that mean that Bonney doesn't have the DNA of the Buccaneers within her? Which brings back a question that a lot of people have been asking, but is Bonney even the biological daughter of Kuma? I have been seeing a lot of theories in the past few days that say that Bonney could be a clone and or artificial human. And with Saint Saturn's line here, it does make that feel a little bit more plausible. But there is also just the scenario where Bonney wasn't born with any Buccaneer DNA within her. So thanks to the Buccaneer talk, we start to get the Kuma flashback. We start with Kuma and Bonney, and Kuma tells Bonney how he wants to be just like Sun God Nika. He wants to liberate people and be their hero. And all I gotta say is that Kuma truly is a hero. He was waiting his entire life for Sun God Nika to come in and help him, but he's the one who ended up helping Sun God Nika at the end of the day. So going through Bonnie's memories, we can actually see that Kuma taught her the Sun God Nika dance as well as the drum beat, which does make me wonder if this is going to be important later in this arc. Because earlier, I did bring up the idea that maybe Luffy needs something special to get his energy back. And what if what he needs is actually just someone humming the Sun God Nika rhythm? Before we go fully into the Kuma flashback, one of the last things we hear between Bonney and Kuma is Bonney asking Kuma if Sun God Nika can actually set her free as well. And Kuma says, yeah, of course he can. And now I'm like, wait, what is chaining Bonney up? As far as we know, Bonney has never been a slave. She's been a pirate, she was Kuma's daughter, she seemed to be living somewhat of a decent life minus family troubles. So what could be holding her back? Which does, bring back what we talked about a minute ago, where maybe she is actually an artificially made human and she wants God Nika to liberate her somehow. I have no clue personally, but it is a really interesting line that Oda decided to slip in there. Before we go on to the flashback though, I just want to reiterate how bad Egghead Island is looking right now. I mean, we end off with the vice admirals pointing their guns at the Straw Hats. We have Bonney being choked out, Luffy is out of commission, things just straight up are not looking good. Now, more than ever here on Egghead, we need a hero. And I really am expecting Kuma to show up by the end of this flashback. That would be really poetic, right? We start a flashback with Kuma, and we end with present-day Kuma coming in to be the hero he wants to be. But of course, if you did want to take a safer bet on who might come and save us, the ancient robot from 200 years ago is apparently still awakened and is on his way here, so that is another option. And yeah, we do still have the possibility of the Blackbeard Pirates, but I wouldn't exactly call them saviors, so there's also that. And now, we cut over to the Sorbet Kingdom 47 years ago. This flashback is rough. Oda was not holding back here. One minute, they're a happy family celebrating the birth of their son, the next minute, they're all enslaved and the mom dies. And then go on one more page and the dad just gets shot because he was dancing too loudly. It is straight up awful. After reading up on this backstory, it definitely explains why Kuma became the man he is today, and maybe even why he is really quiet in nature, and that's simply because his dad was executed for being too loud. If you didn't know this by now, Oda is pretty good at making sad backstories. This time around though, Oda doesn't want to linger on the death of Kuma's parents and instead fast forwards us 9 years into the future to the population eradication tournament. So we learn that every 3 years, the Celestial Dragons pick a brand new non-world government affiliated country to take part in a culling game, where the Celestial Dragons come out for this outing and they all have fun killing the native residents. In this particular year, they decided to choose God Valley, simply because of its name. They're like, hey, these guys are calling themselves gods? That is blasphemous. Let's go there and eradicate them. Hot take, but I think Celestial Dragons are not good people. So going back to the time frame of this event, because this was 38 years ago, this perfectly lines up with the God Valley incident that Roger and Rox and Garp all participated in. So right now, I'm really wondering why they all show up here. Garp, it makes sense because he's a Marine, and of course he's gonna go in to help the Celestial Dragons. But Roger and Rox, what value will they have coming here? The Celestial Dragon announcer says that God's Valley has valuable resources here, and maybe that's the reason why both of those pirates show up, but I have no real clue. You could say that they're here to save the day, but Roger actually helped the Celestial Dragons and Marines defeat Roxy Zebek. So is Roxy Zebek the bad guy or the good guy? Did Rox come in here to free everybody? Did he want the resources? Did he want to kill Celestial Dragons? We have no clue. And the main reason I'm bringing up motive is because a lot of people are saying that this makes Roger look bad. This makes Roger look like a Celestial Dragon sympathizer. And I don't exactly agree with that because I feel like there's so much nuance to this situation and there's so much we don't know about it yet to actually draw that line in the sand and call Roger a bad guy. There has to be a reason why they saved the Celestial Dragons here. The only logical conclusion I can come up with right now is that maybe Rox really is just that bad of a person, and maybe this was the only time that they could actually take him down along with his pirate crew. So the King of God's Valley actually comes out and he says, hey guys, what are you doing? You can't just call my people. And then before he can get his 2 cents in fully, we have the young Saint Garling the Garland slicing this man up. I know we're on the Celestial Dragon hate train, but you gotta admit, Saint Garling is pretty dang cool here. And if you don't want to take my word for it, take the word of the other Celestial Dragons who are all swooning around him. What's interesting about Garling though is that he's one of the only Celestial Dragons, along with the Gorosei, that don't actually wear that bubble helmet. So there's a couple of things to note here with Garling's introduction. But after he kills the king, they say, hey, Garling, that's a penalty, minus 10,000 points. When I read that, I was like, wait, they're keeping track? Is there a prize at the end of the day for this? And the reason I wonder that is because this whole scenario is oddly reminding me of Doflamingo and his birdcage tournament. Of course, we're gonna use the word tournament very loosely, but yeah, Doflamingo kind of held the same thing where he killed the king and then went around slaughtering a bunch of civilians. So I guess the Culling Games just runs in the Celestial Dragon bloodline. So since all of the Celestial Dragons we've met thus far are filthy stinking rich, I can't imagine the prize being straight up money. But on the other hand, there is another prize that I could see this being. They could be fighting for Kaido's Devil Fruit, because we do know that Kaido eats his mythological fish model dragon fruit on this island. Other than that, I have no real clue as to what the prize could be. Another thing to take note of is that Garling is not the supreme commander of the God Knights here. He is just a regular God Knight. So it does make me wonder if we will see the previous supreme commander in this flashback, or if we will see other God Knights participating in this tournament. Because Garling does mention that there are other contestants taking part in this game. Also, with St. Garling's introduction here, this just reinforces the idea that the man Whitebeard was talking about during his first interaction with Shanks was actually Garling. Because you gotta admit, Garling and Shanks do look somewhat alike here. Speaking of Shanks, another thing that I find quite interesting is that during the interaction with Whitebeard, Shanks actually brings Whitebeard sake from his hometown in the West Blue. We know that this island, God's Valley, is where Roger finds Shanks, so there's a good chance that, of course, God's Valley is Shanks' hometown. But with that being the case, how would Shanks get sake from his hometown if God's Valley has disappeared off the face of the earth? Does Shanks know where God's Valley actually is current day? Did this island actually survive? I have no clue, and hopefully with this flashback we will start to get some of those answers. And now, Saint Saturn. We see that he was here 38 years ago at God's Valley. And let me tell ya, he's looking pretty dang good for his age. So with Saint Saturn's reveal here, I am wondering if he's going to partake in any of the fighting. Will he also help take down Roxy Zabek? Will he try to fight Roger? I have no real clue. If I had to guess though, I would say that he doesn't fight here, because if he did, I would imagine that Big Mom or Kaido or someone of that caliber would have mentioned how monstrous the Gorosei members actually are. So now, onto the last page, we see that Kuma is being dragged back to the Culling Game by other slaves, and that is when he runs into a young Ivankov and young Ginny. So the hot topic coming out of this last page all revolves around Ginny, simply because we have not seen her present day. So there's a good chance that she is either incognito or she's actually just straight up dead. The big question that everyone is wondering though is, who is she the mother of? One candidate people are bringing up is Luffy, because Ginny is eating meat and people know that Luffy notoriously loves meat. And not just that, but she does have the Revolutionary Army connection since she is friends with Ivankov and now Kuma. Personally, I don't subscribe to that theory. I am more on the boat that this is Bonnie's mother, simply because of the naming scheme, right? We have Princess Connie, which is Bonnie's grandmother, and now we have Ginny, and then later on we'll have Bonney. So I think it just follows that thematic, and it just makes so much sense for me. And not just that, but bringing back the meat connection. When Bonney was first introduced on Sabaody, she was actually chowing down on a giant piece of meat, just like Ginny here. And now the third option that people are bringing out of the woodworks: Crocodile. People are saying this could be Crocodile before the gender change. And I don't see how that's possible, mainly because Crocodile, as a kid, has already been revealed in an SBS, and he or she looks nothing like Ginny. I'm sorry to all of the Crocomom theorists out there, but I really can't see this one. Maybe that'll change in the future chapters. Maybe Ginny dyes her hair and goes through all these crazy things, but as of right now, I am on the boat that this is Bonnie's mom. So now that we have 2 out of the 3 revolutionary leaders here on God's Valley, the only person we are missing is Dragon. Since Oda is bringing in so many brand new characters into God's Valley, I wouldn't be surprised if we see a young 15, 16-year-old Dragon popping up anytime now. The earliest iteration we have of Dragon is about 20 or so years ago during the Vegapunk Ohara flashback, and we learned that back then, Dragon was actually a freedom fighter. Of course, we don't know if he's the founder of the freedom fighters or if he's been with them for a long time or how young he got into the freedom fighters, but with the name freedom fighters, I wouldn't be surprised if him and his coalition actually show up here at God's Valley to help all of these slaves and the residents of this island. And this could mark the beginning of the friendship of Kuma, Dragon, and Ivankov. Another possibility is that Dragon isn't with the freedom fighters right now, and instead he's actually working with his dad as a part of the Marines. I could also see that. I feel like there's a lot of open doors with Dragon, and I wouldn't be super surprised if he somehow makes his way onto this island. And hey, just a couple of chapters ago, Dragon mentioned that the reason why the Revolutionary Army has been waiting for so long is because he was waiting for the God Knights to make their move first. So what that's telling me is that Dragon has first-hand experience as to how powerful these guys are. And what better place to experience that overwhelming power than here at God's Valley? So yeah, the more I think about it, the more I do believe that Dragon will make his appearance here one way or another. So now on to the comments from the previous video. The first one we have says, "Thank God at least Frankie is getting some focus. I've been pretty upset that he, Robin, and Chopper have been sidelined for the most of Egghead. I better see some Robin and Chopper next chapter." And here's the thing, we haven't seen Robin at all in the past 4 chapters. Robin has been completely MIA. We have no clue where she is or what she is even doing right now. At least last we saw him, Chopper was trying to heal Stussy, whereas Robin is a complete mystery to us. Personally, I would really like it if Robin showed up down on the Fabrio phase and faced off against Saint Saturn. Not because I think she could beat him, but because they do have some history. I mean, Saint Saturn and the rest of the Gorosei were the ones responsible for taking down Ohara. So Robin having a face-off with him and maybe a conversation would be very interesting. So now, the next comment says, Saint Saturn was at God's Valley, but we don't know if he was still there when Rocks attacked. And even if he was, I don't know if he participated, because Garp, Kaido, Big Mom would have all seen his transformation, and I don't think they know about that. And this is a very fair outlook on it because I made the same point earlier, but to play devil's advocate, maybe they did see Saint Saturn transform, and maybe that is the reason why Big Mom and Kaido, for the longest time, did not try to go against the world government. And now, reeling Garp into the mix, we can even say that maybe that's why Garp is so subservient to these celestial dragons. Yeah, Garp doesn't like them, and most of the time he ignores them, but he still works for them, and maybe that's the reason why, because he acknowledges how strong the Gorosei actually are. But hey man, who knows, anything is possible here on God's Valley, and with us approaching chapter 1100, I feel like Oda's got a lot of spicy things planned for it. The events of God Valley really are showing off the phrase, history is written by the victors. And I completely agree, because back when we first learned about God's Valley, Sengoku was like, hey, yeah, you know, there were celestial dragons on the island, that crazy Rocksteady Zepek was over there, but thankfully, Garp and Roger teamed up and took them down. But the more we learn about God's Valley, the more we learn that Sengoku didn't really paint a clear picture as to what really went down there. So now, on to the last comment. It says, so at this point, here's a list of confirmed top tiers that are on God's Valley. Assuming this leads into the incident, we have Roger, Rayleigh, Garp, Rocks, Whitebeard, Big Mom, Young Kaido, Shiki, Garling, Saturn, and kid versions of Kuma and Eva. Man, he didn't even mention Silverax. He didn't mention Wang Ji. He didn't mention the young Buckingham Stussy. We got so many more people here than what is even listed, and that is how insane Egghead Island actually is. This is a Marineford scaled event. The one thing I am hoping, begging for, is that these fights don't get off screen. I want to see what happens. I really hope Oda does not fast forward past this. As far as this flashback goes, I do believe we are going to continue following Kuma, simply because the flashback starts with Bonney saying that Saint Saturn killed Kuma, but that didn't happen until just recently, right? Kuma didn't become a full robot until just recently, so we still have to follow him throughout the years. So I do believe we're going to continue this flashback, but the one thing I am hoping for is that Oda shows us these fights at the fullest scale possible. But hey, that's just me, and I really want to hear what you guys have to say about this entire chapter, this video, and everything in general. I really freaking appreciate you guys for being here and watching up until this point. And yeah, if you made it, please consider liking, commenting, and subscribing. That would really help out the channel a lot. Shoutouts to the channel members and Patreon members here on the sides. You guys are the freaking best. And I'll catch you guys next time. My name is Sai, and I'm signing out. Peace.